What is up, everybody? It's your boy Jalen, and welcome back to the Locker Room Podcast, the number one podcast in the world for former athletes to engage in conversations about the difficulty of transitioning out of a highly committed sports lifestyle and into normal life. The first part of today's conversation is centered around one big question. What does staying at one school your entire college career teach you about patience, consistency, and trusting the process before you ever see results? Because when you really think about player development, it's not just about how quickly a player gets on the field. It's also about building valuable relationships, maturing as a player and a person, and persevering through adversity. So today, we're going to talk about what it means to stay the course, how you develop into an impact player over time, and why earning your role can shape you in ways playing time never could. And of course, I'm not having this conversation alone. I'm joined by James Hawkins, who I shared the field with in high school, where he went on and played college football for 5 years at the same school, had some pro opportunities, and obviously brings his own perspective as a former athlete navigating life after sports. So whether you're a former athlete, a current athlete, a parent, a coach, or just somebody who loves the game, this conversation is guaranteed to give you something to think about. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to follow the show, leave a 5-star review, like, comment, and share this episode with another athlete or sports fan who needs to hear this conversation. Now, let's bring it back to the locker room. All right, well, Hawk, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
How y'all doing? My name is James Hawkins, former Albany State football player. I was a defensive back there, played all three positions, corner, safety, nickelback. Played there for 5 years, got the opportunity to go to the next level, got to talk to some teams and stuff like that, playing some all-star games. But things just didn't work out for me. But, still I learned a lot, enjoyed the experience and everything. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So take us back to when you first got there, freshman year. What was the program like when you got there, and what role did you expect to have early on?
So getting to Albany early on, the program, it was in a transition period because there was a lot of uncertainty behind the new head coach that had came in. And so just before I had gotten there, the old coaching staff that recruited me going into the spring, they had all resigned. So it put us kind of in a whirlwind as far as being recruits, trying to figure out what the next steps were to get down there. And then also too, like, just the energy of the team going through a period of change. Like, some people want to stick with the old ways while other people are trying to, get with the new ways. And so coming in, it wasn't the best environment. It wasn't a bad environment, but we were definitely kind of like front runners. So it was like whenever things would go good, it would go great. But when things went bad, it was like things kind of just fell apart. And so my role on the team at the time, I was thinking that maybe I would be a backup or a special team kind of guy, but just honestly, like, I wasn't physically developed enough. Like, I was out there, I was able to compete, but I still had issues within my game. And then, it was just a different level, different speed. And so eventually I had to sit down, talk with my coach, and they decided to redshirt me. And so it put me in a different headspace because I wasn't really expecting the red shirt. But also too, like, it was something that I kind of knew that I needed to do. And so, I just tried to stay as locked in as I could. But that was my first time, like essentially not playing in the season. So it was definitely like a change in temperature for me from being in high school where, it was kind of like immediately we were thrown in the fire. And so, yeah, I learned a lot from it, though. And at the end of that season, we ended up beating our rival. But because we had lost the 2 games before that, it kept us from being in the playoffs. And so going into that offseason, a lot of it, like the team atmosphere, it was just us, trying to really be focused and really trying to push to get to that next step of making it to the championship.
Okay, that's cool. So you said you said having the conversation with your coach about redshirting kind of, shook you up just a little bit because that's not what you were expecting. What were your expectations going into it? Like, did you think you were going to start? Did you think you were going to play a lot or just be in a rotation? Like, what were your expectations?
I was really thinking I was going to be in the rotation, like, because I remember being in high school and just looking through the roster and stuff and trying to see, like, okay, how big are these guys that's playing DB? Let's see if I can figure out some background behind them. Not knowing that, just how drastically a college roster could change from year to year. And so coming in, like I was thinking like, okay, I'm not too bad. I could probably get in here and there. But, I was faced with reality like, hey man, we my coaches were like, hey, our checks are on the line. Like we got to put out the best. We got to put the best 11 out there. And one I learned real quick, like just because you may be getting second team reps in practice does not mean that you'll be the backup when the game comes. Because like I said, they're looking for the best 11. If they need to, they will put a safety out there. They will
Wow.
they'll put other people out there if they feel like they can trust those guys out there. And that's another thing too. I had to learn how to be somebody that coach could trust. And so it was like, like if they feel like they trusted somebody else out there more than they trusted me, like it didn't matter. Like, and also too, not being not being accustomed to what it looked like to really practice like a professional and really take things, serious. Like, there'd be times where, I'd like in practice, I may not be super focused, or I may let a certain player or a certain mistake happen. And in my head, I'm thinking it's not that big, but, to these coaches, it's like, dang, like we've let you sit and watch the starter do this and you're still messing up. Like, what are we doing? And so it just put things in perspective for me. Like I had to essentially just grow up from, the mindset that we had in high school, or the mindset that I had in high school, thinking that, things would just, I guess, essentially kind of like fall to me.
Yeah, that's really important. I think what you said is learning how to grow up and having to kind of face that reality that you have to develop trust with these coaches. And in high school, it's not that the coaches don't have their jobs on the line, but at the end of the day, these coaches want to make moves and they want to maybe take the next step in a couple years, whatever that might be. And if you get in the way of that, then you won't get in the game, like point blank, period. And one thing also that you kind of mentioned a little bit, but the talent gap, like between high school and college. In Albany State is D2. I went to Morehouse D2 also, but I went into the off season after we graduated thinking like, oh man, I'm a train and whatnot. But I think I'm about to start. Like I'm about to be one of the best players. And bro, that couldn't have been further from the truth. Like it was such a shock to me getting there and realizing how good these players were. And like you realize all these players were like you or better coming out of high school. Like all these players are on scholarships, so they clearly had to earn it. And when you're coming in, you're competing with juniors and seniors and stuff. And for you to think you'll come in as a freshman and start, bro, I mean, unless you really like that, like you gonna have a lot of work to do. And it's not that it's not possible, but you just have to kind of understand, like you said, trust. Like practices are meant to build trust and help you get those mental reps. Because in the game, it's a whole different thing. Like you can't get a play back and coaches be like, yeah, run it again. Like, no, it's either, you might get it. It might be a touchdown. So coaches can't, just put you in there just because you think you're ready to go.
That's the truth. Like, just understanding that everybody that is down at these schools that you're going to, whether it's D1, D2, even like D3 NAIA schools, like a lot of guys is there that they were the guy in high school. So to come in thinking that just because you did this in high school or just because you did that, like it really doesn't matter, because you got to line up against a person who's probably been training at a college level for 2-3 years. Meanwhile, this is your first experience of ever being a part of a football game where everybody else is 18 plus. So it's a huge gap that, like, it's not to say it's impossible to overcome, because you definitely can overcome it. And some people in high school, they just physically develop faster than others. But, like, that's just the truth behind it. Like, it's tough. Like, there's a lot of talent that, it's players that don't even play on Friday or on Saturday nights. You know what I'm saying? That's just, I don't want to say they're practice warriors, but like you don't even realize in high school, like, yeah, no, you're really battling for your reps against this guy, this dude who's been grinding to get in this position for the last 2 years. So it's just, it's just a different level of competition, really.
Yeah, most definitely. And like you said, you kind of realize that the practices are like the games for you. Like if you want to play, like you have to treat practices like they are games, because if not, like people taking it more serious than you, that's also I feel like that's a part of maturing and understanding, or just getting used to the college environment. Because coming in as a freshman, if you were at a high school that didn't prepare you in that way for what college is going to be like, and understanding that you're going to have to compete for everything that you have, especially because as a senior in high school, you basically going out on top for the most part. And like you said, you're used to playing all the time, playing every snap in the game, sometimes playing both sides of the ball, playing on special teams. And then you go from that to basically just practicing and watching other people play the whole time. So, and then honestly, one thing that shocked me too was like, especially when the season started, barely getting in practice. Like I'll be running like not even the threes. So I'm getting like maybe 2 or 3 reps in team period and 7-on-7 and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's just, you have to really pay attention. And it's kind of, I think in high school, it kind of emphasizes the importance of, knowing what you're getting yourself into, like asking coaches, asking players that's been there, like what to expect and how you can better prepare for that. Because if not, you're really going to be kind of get your block rocked.
Yeah, it's definitely a shell-shocking experience. Like just the difference in tempo with, high school practice to college practice, especially if you're somebody who was, getting a lot of prominent high school reps. Like, in college, they got the ones, they got the twos, and they got the threes. And most of the reps are going to the ones. If you're a two, you'll get some reps here and there. But if you're a three or down below, like it'll be some practices where you're just standing there. And you're still gonna be expected to understand and know what's going on so that when they call your number up and, somebody gets hurt and they throw you in the game, you better keep up the same production.
Yeah, that's a fact. And especially a corner too. Like if they put a backup in, they finna go at you instantly.
Man,
so
instantly.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's actually funny, like, just seeing the different tendencies at a college level that, like, in high school, we never really noticed. Like, something like, if they put a backup corner in, they're about to run a go ball to his side or about to go and see what he's talking about. And it's like one thing, in high school, like, they put in a backup corner, but you may not have a quarterback or you may not have the offense to where you can just, go and check them out. But in college, like, a lot of the quarterbacks you end up facing or a lot of the, well, like I said, it's a different level. So, everybody sees that. Everybody sees that's a new person in. Okay, let's go see. Or like even on the film, like say if you put out film from the week before where, you're not really doing that well or, you get cooked a couple of times, every team in the conference just took note of that and they're like, okay, yeah, no, we're going at him. Every time he's in the game, we're going at him. He's the fish.
Yeah, it's a whole nother ball game, man. It's like 4D chess. Like you really got to be on top of your game. So I wanted to ask. You mentioned you played all 3 defensive positions. How did that come about? Like when did you first switch from corner and what was the next position you played after that?
So yeah, coming in, I was recruited at corner, and my freshman year, it was 2 other boys that had been brought in, and they were in the classroom. They were juniors, but I didn't know this at the time. I think on the field, they were like sophomores, I want to say. And so they were there for 2017, 2018, 2019. So that was 3 years where, the first year I was a red shirt. Second year, I backed them up, barely got any reps. Like, I think I got my first like legitimate reps in the championship game because they had gotten hurt. And even though I didn't do that bad, like, coming back into that third year, they were still the guys. They were still the starters. So at that point, I was making a name for myself on special teams. And I got to a point to where, like, the coaches could trust me more. But it was like I was just trying to fit in a place where it wasn't really any room for me. And so it was after our Mississippi college game, I think it was, I went and talked with my coach. Like, I told him, I was like, hey, like, coach, I think I see what our nickel is doing. I see what our star is doing. I'm not saying that, like, they're bad or anything like that, but I think that, I could put up some similar production. Like, I think I could learn it. And so my coach was actually pretty excited about it because at the time we were really low in depth with our with our nickel, because our original starter had messed up his shoulder and he was out for the season. So we were off rip having to put in a backup safety. And so, for our coach, he was just happy to get some more depth. And I started to understand the importance of just being a person or being that person on the team that the team needs. Like, I saw that we had, a hole in the nickel spot. I was like, hey, coach, I could step up and fill that gap. And so for that 2019 season, I really just, still took special teams super serious, but I started to get more prominent reps at the nickel spot, started to learn technique and, just trying to build on that. It was definitely a switch up though, because, ever since high school, I was playing, on the outside, I was playing corner. I pretty much just had my own island. And then going to play nickel is like, some days or sometimes some plays I'll be man to man with that slot receiver, but then sometimes I'm like a linebacker. Then it's sometimes I'm coming down like I'm a DN going off the edge. Like it was really like I was it was really like I was, just really in the mix. And so I remember my first couple practices going against the linemen and inside drill, and my coach was telling me to spill, and I didn't know how to spill blocks. And so I was definitely getting my block took off a couple of times, but I learned through that. Eventually got better with it, and it's just funny because blitzing ended up becoming like one of my favorite things to do out there. When at first it was something that like I really didn't want to do. Like, and it's not like I couldn't blitz off the edge, like I'm just running around people. But it's when coach would call me like, yeah, no, you gotta fit into this B gap. Or like you gotta go tight off this C gap and go under the block. It's like, hold on, coach. Like, I'm only 170. But, like I said, I got better with the technique and just grew in that area. And so by the end of that season, it's just funny because, like I said, at this same time, I was taking special teams super serious. And so we went to our rivalry game against Fort Valley, and I blocked 3 punts, scored 2 touchdowns, and 1 MVP. And that kind of, like, at that point, it kind of I feel like it kind of put pressure on the coaches to where it was like, dang, like, this is an MVP. Why is he not playing? And so we get into the championship game, and I didn't start, but I was starting on some sub packages at this time. But some stuff happened, and eventually they ended up moving me into the base pack or into our base package. And like, even though we didn't win the game, I had a pretty solid game myself. And going into that off season, my coach let me know, he was like, "Yeah, Hawk, I need you to start at nickel for me for this upcoming season. Like you're gonna be my guy who I'm rocking with." I'm like, "All right, bet, coach." And so at this point, I just made the transition from corner to nickel. And I think also too, one thing that helped me out with playing nickel was really 2 things. So number one, playing corner, spending 2 years at corner, because that allowed me to, work on my man-to-man technique, work on the different things that in high school I really wasn't all that well in. And so being able to bring that toolbox with me to, playing the nickel, playing the slot. So it wasn't ever like I felt like I was in a mismatch. Like I felt like I could guard anybody out there. But then also too, in youth ball, I used to play D-end. I played D-end for 4 years while I was playing Sandy Creek. And like, had I not played D-end for all those years, I felt like that's kind of what gave me that edge whenever I was kind of like playing linebacker or playing like I was blitzing off the edge. Like a lot of this stuff is starting to feel like second nature for me because I had done it before. But it was like I had to like re-tap back into like some old football stuff that I kind of like, going from playing D-end in youth ball to playing corner in high school, I never thought that I would be back down on the D-line. But then I get to college and they're like, yeah, we need you to blitz off the edge for us or blitz in this speed gap for us. Like, that's just what it is. And it's like, all right, well, I'm glad that I got the background that I got. And so that really just helped me out. But going into 2020, that's when we had our COVID, season. They canceled the whole season. So pretty much that whole year, it just went to, straight preparation. Like, while we were at home, I know you remember we were in the dungeon, every day pretty much. Like it was some time. And so once I got back down to Albany, I just, continued on with the grind, with the energy. And then also too, I gotta shout out my boy Jordan. So Jordan, he was somebody who played nickel too, but my coaches, they weren't really like playing like that, but he was somebody who was, constantly working, constantly, like trying to get better at his craft. And like me and him would always hang out and, just like going through the different struggles and stuff that we went through. Like it eventually turned into us like trying to get each other better. So like a lot of that time, like he's playing nickel, I'm playing nickel. We're learning the playbooks with each other. We're testing each other's IQ. We teaching each other different techniques and stuff like that. Like it was, it was really just iron sharpening iron. And so, we get into the season and we get into, and at this point, it's 2021. We get into the season, and I think it was the second or third game of the season. At this point, I think we were 2-0, 3-0 or something like that. But we had played Valdosta, and I was having a pretty good game, but then I ended up breaking my hand, and I went down. We ended up having our backups come in, and then we lost that game. But I think that next game we played Clark Atlanta, and it was just cool because I got to see my dog Jordan. He had went crazy during that game, so it was like for me to go down and then to see him step up. You know what I'm saying? Like that was kind of like a testament to just like how hard we had been working. But with my hand though, I was out for I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks. And when I came back, I was wearing a club. And so that was my first time ever playing with the club. And I didn't really know how I was going to play because I was so used to having both my hands. And if you don't know, a club is basically just a cast. You know, it's going to pretty much protect your whole hand. I think the only finger I had out was my thumb. Other than that, everything was, you know, covered up in the cast. They put a little pad on it. Like it was just like a big block. And so at first it was kind of like an adjustment trying to figure out how to play with it. Cause like I said, it felt like I was kind of at a disadvantage, but it in turn, it really made me more aggressive because it was like, yo, I can't, you know, catch the ball. I can't really, you know, do too much of what I want to do, but it's like I got this extra weight on my hand. And so, it really turned into me, like, say if I was going to make a tackle, like, bro, I'm throwing my hand in there. It's like giving me some extra weight, some extra torque. Like I'm out there like doing all types of stuff. It'd be times where people would try to block me on the edge, and like I can't rip off the block, but I can keep hitting you with this club in your head till you till you don't want to keep blocking me. So like it would just be funny. Like the refs, they would kind of let me do my thing because you know, whenever a player would complain about it, the ref would be like, "Well, dude, he only got one hand. Like, what you expect him to do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I can't. It's not like I can really do what I want to do, but." You know, it was cool though. Like I said, it made me more aggressive. It made me more, you know, like it was like I embraced contact even more, you know. And I also too, the fact of the matter that we had a whole year off from football, that was something that like also I think played into the role of just me embracing contact more because it was like, dang, like I didn't think after my redshirt year that I would go through another year missing football, but you know I went through another year missing football and like. You know, it just made me more appreciative of, you know, getting that opportunity to go out there and play. And so we ended up winning the championship that year and going to the playoffs. And we lost in the first round of the playoffs, but I ended up getting hurt that game again. I ended up getting a pinched nerve in my shoulder. And so that whole off season, they had me on non-contact. Like when we got the spring ball, I was wearing a red jersey. Like I hated it. And so going into my last season, we were playing, this is really similar to like 2019, but we were playing Mississippi College again. And like I said, at this point I was pretty much locked in at nickel. Like they really didn't want to move me. But our starting free safety, he ended up getting hurt and he was out for the season. Yeah, I think he messed up his pec. And when he messed up his pec, you know, our coaches, they were trying to just figure out how to go about things. And like I said, they want to put the best 11 out there, the most trusted 11 out there. So they ended up moving me back to free safety. And then they had another one of my boys, Trey. He ended up starting at nickel. And so at that point, it was like, I was kind of, I don't want to say I was learning on the fly, but I kind of was learning on the fly. But because I had been in the system as long as I had been in the system, it was really like I had seen people, you know, play free safety. Like I had seen plenty of reps of free safety. Like I knew what everything was supposed to look like. You know what I mean? Like I knew how my puzzle piece fit. And then also too, my roommate from my first 4 years in college, Coimba Jones, he was an All-American free safety. Like I'm talking about like as soon as he came in, you know, like he's somebody, a little dude from Miami, super competitive, like, you know, like heartbeat of the team. And so, like, I remember freshman year, even though he was, like, smaller than everybody, like, he had the biggest heart. He was tackling whoever. He didn't care. He was covering whoever. And, like, being somebody who was on the sideline watching that, it made you excited and want to go out there and play. You know what I mean? And so, like seeing that and knowing, like, okay, I've seen free safety. I've seen what a good free safety looks like. Is like, yo, like, okay, I'm just going to make sure that if I'm doing something, it's gonna look like this on film because I know this is the standard. And so playing, up top, it essentially was kind of like playing in the nickel, but it was like I had more space. Like that was kind of like my mindset about it. And I think honestly though, even I think free safety was probably the easiest position to play just because it was a lot of zones. It was a lot of kind of just watching things play out in front of you and then fitting in the right spot. But I think for me, I found home playing nickel because it was kind of like a combination of all three levels of the defense. Playing I'm playing in coverage, I'm playing in the box, I'm blitzing off the edge. Like it wasn't no other position like that on the defense. And it felt like because I felt like I was a versatile player. And so it just allowed me to showcase those skills the best. But
Wow, that was a lot. That was great. So I want to go back to, well, first I want to point out that I admire your ability to go to your coach and basically advocate for yourself to change that position because, who knows how many players is out here who are stuck behind players, even though they may be great, but they're still stuck. They can't move. And like for you to go and try to work in somewhere else and notice the problems y'all were having with depth in the nickel position. I mean, it's just like I feel like something that I talk about a lot is being flexible, like being, like you said, being someone that the team needs. Because at the end of the day, if y'all have an abundance of corners, then either you only have a few options. You either gonna stay, you gonna transfer, or you're going to quit. Or in your case, the other option is find somewhere else to fit in. And that's when you see some players may switch to offense or, change positions on the defense. So kind of speak a little bit more to that about the need to be more flexible into like, if you really want to play, like you have to figure.
Man, just like I've seen plenty of our athletes just down at Albany. It's like you'll come in as one position, but you'll realize there's a need at another position, or you may have the talent or the skill to play at that other position. And like in high school, like one thing I didn't understand in high school is that just because you played this position in high school, this is just what your high school team needed. That may not be like what your actual position is. And so, like, I just had to embody the mindset of like, bro, I'm a football player. You know what I mean? Like, coach, if you need me to play receiver and I gotta run a sling or I gotta run a go ball or something like that, I could do that. But like even like I remember in high school, like we were switching up our offense a whole bunch our senior year, and there were even reps where I would play at fullback. And it's like, bro, I'm not a fullback, but I'm a football player. I'm gonna try to fill in where I can fit in. It's like I'm somebody who, if I want to be somebody who can be trusted, if I want to be somebody that wants to be on the field, like, you can't just stick to, oh, I'm this, I want to do this. Like, it's a real selfish mindset to have. And it's not to say that you shouldn't trust in yourself and believe in yourself, but also too, like, if you got the opportunity to get on the field and showcase your talents in another position and, just understand like in the league, like, it's people who get paid millions of dollars just to rush the edge on third down, fourth down. You know what I mean? Like you may think that you're this, but if you have a certain skill set or a certain, set of talents to where, you can exploit certain things, like, it's good to lean on those talents.
Yeah, that's good. Me and Janai were just talking about that, about how, talent is talent at the end of the day. Coaches are going to find you. And, although, we can talk about different ways to be exposed and different opportunities that, benefit some players over others. But like you said, I think that was great. Like if you're going to be a football player, then play football, like do what the team needs. But if you're just kind of in it for yourself, then yeah, you're going to pigeonhole yourself pretty quickly. I did want to ask though, because you played all three, corner, free safety, and nickel. Do you think that would help more defensive players? Like, do you think a corner could benefit from switching in? And do you think free safeties could benefit? And I know sometimes safeties, they may interchange a little bit more just because that's the safety position, even though it is different. But do you think there's benefit in all the defensive backs playing nickel?
I personally think it is because, for one, if there's a trend going on in the NFL to where, like, essentially, like, they try to have like 5 defensive backs in the game where they're kind of like playing positionless football. Like,
yep.
sometimes, they'll be pressed up on the outside one-on-one, but then sometimes they're in the linebacker fit. Sometimes they playing up high. Like it's like when you have that amount of flexibility, it gives the coach so much more versatility with just the different looks and stuff that he wants to set up. But then also too, like, you just never know when you'll be in certain positions, like it may be a certain call that coach calls that, next thing you know, you're lined up man to man on, the other team's best guy. And that's just what it is. You just got to go and play ball. And, if you're not versatile, then, you're going to feel like, dang, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. But if you have that versatility, or if you, try to build up on those skills, then essentially you'll feel like whatever coach asks of you to do, then it's like, all right, bet I can do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just about, like I said, being what a team needs, and not every team's needs are going to be the same. Not every team runs the same scheme or has the same techniques. Some coaches prefer for their guys to play with outside leverage. Some coaches prefer for their guys to play with inside leverage. But as a player, like, you should just be able to listen and be coachable and do what you're coached to do. And at the end of the day, it's football. You just got to make a play.
Yeah, that's facts. I think the point about just becoming more versatile by doing that, by switching to, not necessarily switching, but seeing if you can find reps at nickel. And I think that points to another conversation to have with the coach about, hey, I know I play this position, but I want to be that guy in the team that can do do anything on the field, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's another conversation that players need to have, even in high school, about finding where their talents can be best used. Because like you said, yeah, maybe the team does need a corner, but like for us, for example, we needed. Well, we didn't really need receivers, but we needed.
I understand.
Yeah.
Like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, so one of our best corners down at Albany, Jari Turner. So when Jari had first came in, he was a receiver, and it wasn't like he was a bad receiver. He was a long, lanky receiver. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't an easy task to guard him. But when he was in high school, that, like, receiver was his main position, but he got some quality reps at corner. And I don't remember what it was, but one day we ended up just moving him to corner. And, like, it was like we realized immediately, like, whoa, this dude is a jewel, like a hidden jewel. And he stayed with us for 2 or 3 years. And eventually he hit the transfer portal and transferred up to Central Michigan. And so that, like, it's like this dude just went from being a Division II, he got recruited as a Division II receiver, but he finished his college career as a D1 FBS division back, or a defensive back. You know what I mean? Like, and that just came from him exposing that versatility.
Yeah, that's crazy. We had a similar story when I was at Charleston about a corner. He was probably like 6'2", same kind of build, like super lanky, and he switched to receiver, and this dude was one-handing balls. Like, it was just crazy how because at corner, if you're a fast guy, you can showcase that, but not really, not the same as if you play receiver. And so when he played receiver, it was like this dude just reached another gear. It was crazy, and so he ended up basically having like a breakout season after switching. Even though he was like a junior when I came in, so when he was a senior, like, bro, he was just kind of going crazy at receiver. But it's just crazy how that works. But being open-minded about your career, like, at the end of the day, if you want to make it to the next level, like, you have to be, unless you're one of those guys, you have to figure out a way to get on the field. Because if not, then you're cooked either way.
Yeah. You got to figure out a way to get on the field. That's mandatory. You gotta be flexible. You don't want to just be stuck in your ways thinking that it's my way or the highway, because you'll very soon find out that they will send you to the highway.
Yeah, that's a fact. So I want to go back just a little bit. For your redshirt season, and then you said you sat behind the other two corners until the 2019 season, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you, during that point, I know you said that you were kind of biding your time and still learning and things like that, but did you ever feel like things weren't moving fast enough, and that did you ever consider transferring, or what was that like?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So because of how they handled redshirting me freshman year, like, I think it would have been one thing if they would have told me off rip, like, hey, you're a redshirt. But the way things happened for me was they had me on the travel squad list. They had me on the depth chart. I was traveling to the games, but I just wasn't playing. Like I stood on the sideline the whole time. And so I think I did that for like the first 4 or 5 games of the season. And like that fifth game, like it was like it was bad. We were getting blown out and like coach still wasn't throwing me in. So at that point it was kind of like a frustration thing. It's like, dang, like, I'm not having bad practices or anything like that. And it seems like there's an opportunity where it's like if you're gonna find out about somebody, you might as well throw them in now. But, I still wasn't getting the reps. And so like me sitting down with my coach and talking to him about it, it was more so out of frustration, like, dang, like, if I'm not gonna play, you might as well redshirt me. And they were like, all right, bet, cool. And so they went and redshirted me. And so when we came back that next season, like, and then also too, I didn't fully understand. I didn't know that they were gonna be there for 3 years. I thought that next season was gonna be their last season. So I thought 2018 was their last season. And so in my head, rather than playing to be a starter and trying to like prepare myself to, try not even prepare myself, but like instead of trying to like work right now to get the spot right now or show that the coach can trust me right now, it was like I was trying to prepare for something that really wasn't what I thought it'd be later on. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't taking the time to be serious with the time that I had there. And like it was, how do I say this? I feel like I didn't respond. I feel like I didn't respond that well, honestly. Like kind of going into that 2018 season, I was happy that we were winning, but internally, like I was mad within myself. I was mad that, I wasn't able to play. I wasn't able to, showcase my talents and stuff like that. And, but still, I was still having like a lot of the same mess ups that I was having from, my original freshman year. Like as far as development was going, like I was getting more developed, but, I wasn't developing at the rate that I thought I was. And so when we came back in 2019, like, like my coaches, I remember, so that whole spring I had sat out because I had gotten surgery on my shoulder, and they ended up bringing in like one or two other corners like that transferred in. And, that 2019 season, like I was still like, I remember starting off fall camp, and I remember the fall camp, the fall camp, my redshirt freshman year, I was like a 2 on that depth chart. But then the fall camp going into 2019, I was like a 5 or a 6.
Dang.
The coaches were trying to get rid of me. And so it was like for me, once I realized that, and I realized like, bro, like it's, you don't just get given things. Like they're literally looking for the next best man. Like they'll go, to whatever lengths to try to find that next best man. They're not going to just settle with you just because you're here. And it was like, all right, like I gotta figure this out. I gotta take it to the next level. And so it just made me be more mature, take every rep more serious, like even the reps that I had on the sideline. And then also too, like just understand, it was like I started spending more time with my coaches, started really breaking down film, trying to figure out why the defense worked the way that it did. Just like I felt like I had gotten to a point to where like it was like I was trying to understand the defense schematically because I knew my position. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what all the calls were. And it was like at this point now I got to understand like why are we calling the calls that we call, and why does this specific technique that y'all want me to play make this call work? And, just leaning on, it was like once I started to learn more of that, I started to play better. But then also at the same time, I'm also making this transition period into playing nickel. And so like it really just worked out in my favor, because I think had I played nickel sooner than when I had that mindset, I probably still wouldn't have done that well at nickel. Like because it was, you're learning a whole nother position at a college level. Like I would have had to learn all the blitz. Like I was learning all the blitzes. I'm saying I would have had to learn all the blitzes. I would have had to learn all the different plays and stuff, like all the different techniques. And there's a level of maturity that you got to have to really break down the college playbook and really understand why it is your puzzle piece fits the way that it does. And so, I think I just had to be more focused. Like it was tough, but yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I would say that was probably one of the things that I lacked the most, is kind of the desire to. I lacked it, but I was also immature. But I just didn't I never took it upon myself to understand my part in the defense. And because I played corner, it wasn't really that much you kind of have to figure out. Like, it's pretty simple. But I never took the time to understand why the defense was being run the way it was. Like, why certain players work better than others, why certain calls were being made. Like, I never really, until I really, like, my last year playing football, which I didn't even really care about playing at that point, that's when I kind of started to understand some things and it started to come together. But I think it should be, and people talk about film study all the time, so I'm not going to act like it's this unheard of thing. But habits like that really, you have to start them in high school, because especially in college, there's a lot of moving pieces. If you're going through kind of experiences like you were going through, being behind other people, like the main thing that you're kind of usually worried about is just playing, like getting on the playing field. But the kind of different approach you took was like, let me figure out the holistic perspective. Like, let me not just focus on myself. Let me step outside of myself a little bit and figure out like why, why all these things are kind of coming together like that. And I think that mature and that just having that intellectual part of the game, I feel like may help players sometimes unlock something that they haven't before. And honestly, I feel like a reality is some players just aren't going to play, and that's just that. But what you may do is unlock a grad assistant role because you understand so much, or maybe you unlock a passion becoming a coach or something like that. So I feel like just that part of the game, the mental aspect is kind of, I just say I undervalued it. And I feel like every time I hear people like you, people like Trent talk about that side of it, like it kind of makes you realize the gap between high school and college, but then college to the pros, because then in the pros it's mainly all about film, being in the right place at the right time, understanding the tendencies, who's doing what, why they're doing it, when they're doing it. So yeah, I just find that super interesting.
Like, I mean, it's funny, but so my freshman year in college, I'll never forget this. So I had an English teacher who, shout out to Dr. Matt, but he used to give us these writing assignments where the prompt, it felt like it was pretty simple. It didn't feel like it was something too complex. Like, he showed us different essays and stuff in class with how he liked for his papers to look. And basically, if you turned in a paper to him, and it may have been the best written paper that you've ever done, you could turn in this paper to him, but not have visited him one time that whole week outside of class, and the highest grade you're going to get on that is a C. But if you go see him at least one time, and then you just went from getting a C to getting a guaranteed B. And then it's like the more and more that you see him and spend time with him, the more the more he would just show you different tweaks and stuff that he'd want you to do to your paper. And sure enough, you're going to get an A because you're getting exactly what it is that he wanted. And so I started to just adopt that mindset in with football. Like my first year, like, I really wasn't going to the coach too much. Like, my redshirt year, I really wasn't going to the coach too much. Then my redshirt freshman year, I'd visit coach here and there, but I would be more so like I spent more time by myself trying to break down film and try to understand things myself without really having that guide for me. But then 2019, that's when it kind of started to click with me. Like, I can't figure, like, I don't really even understand what it is that I'm looking at. Like, I need to really just like sit down and break this down with coach. Like, help me understand this. And so, he broke it down, as much as he could for me. Like, we just going over different plays, different tendencies. And then also too, just because of the role that I was kind of like the role I was stepping into, it went from me not really playing like that to me playing special teams. So the more I learned, it was like I started having to learn, just different techniques with my dropper. Like, I'm studying film because I'm studying film the whole week on just kickoff and kickoff return, or punt and punt return. And it's like, I gotta make sure that L5, like, he's showing me that he's doing this on film every day. So I'm gonna be prepared for this every time I see him, because I know, I'm gonna have that situation in the game where L5 is going, he's gonna dip and rip, or he's gonna do this and that, and I'm gonna be prepared for it. And, I went from having that special teams role to being in on sub packages. And so being in on sub packages, I think that's where it really started to click with me. Because so our sub packages, we only ran those for the most part on like third down, fourth down. And so my coach just started to show me the different tendencies of what teams do on third down. And then we just started watching film on I remember we was watching film on some team. I think it may have been like Lane College or somebody, but we only watched their third downs from like the last 2 or 3 games, and I want to say like 60 or 70% of those third downs they ran a mesh concept, and it was like, yo, this is literally what we're gonna be practicing all week. And then we get to the game. Sure enough, that first third down, they ran a mesh concept, and the receiver that they were throwing the ball to, he ended up getting smacked over the middle. Next time they ran a mesh concept, they tried to add in the tight end to the mesh, and we end up blitzing 6, and boom, the quarterback's getting hit. Like my coaches really had it broken down to where like they even understood like the protections and understanding like, okay, whenever this team gets this front, this is how they shift their protection. So if we show them this front, but then we add an extra rusher to that other side and they slide their lineman this way, that extra rusher is going to get in free every time. Like they were breaking it down. Like it's to the point where like even to this day I'd still probably like if I could, and I got their number, but I just really value that opportunity to like just sit down with the coaches and really just break down, football. Like it gives you a different perspective of it that as a player I didn't understand because, us as players we're really like just pawns in a game of chess. But there's a whole side of it that, as far as, the coaching goes, like that's the real chess match that's going on. It's like this offensive coordinator scheme versus this defensive coordinator scheme, like, and not every scheme is ran the same, but there's a lot of the same different, instances and stuff like that, just different things that each team does. But yeah, I just learned a lot. A lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think one of my regrets is not taking advantage of opportunities like that. And not that. So, quick question: did your coaches ever ask you to come in there and watch film, or was that something you strictly took upon yourself to go do?
So they would. So there'd be times where we'd have film study as like a position group, but it wouldn't ever be like that would be like specifically during, practice time. Like they've got scheduled time for that. But our coaches would actually like, I don't want to say they'd ask us, but they'd let us know. They'd be like, hey, if you got time, pull up on us. Come see us. And, like the coaches definitely knew who was coming in there to come talk to them, who wasn't. And, sometimes it don't even have to be like you going in there and you spending like an hour, 2 hours in there. It can literally be like, okay, you got 30 minutes before class. You pull up on coach for 10, 15 minutes, and then you just go to class.
Like, right. Okay. Yeah, that's one of my regrets is not taking advantage of those opportunities because I didn't really know what I was looking at with film. I just never really watched it at all. Like and my situation was a lot different from yours because I got there, like you said, was kind of running with the 4s and 5s with the other freshmen and kind of other players that wasn't really advancing, and we had a lot of injuries. And also, I was doing better in practice too, so I was practicing better. I was showing I can handle it, and I went through an adjustment period after coming through camp. I was getting cooked in one-on-ones, bro. I just couldn't adjust to the speed. But then as the kind of off season went on, I going through camp, I was able to kind of keep up with him a little bit more, and I adjusted to the tempo. And so going into the season, I think I was running with I think I may have been the first person off the 4s or maybe the bottom of the 3s. So we had, it was so many people that got hurt. So by like the 5th game, I was starting. 5th or 6th, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up starting pretty much every other game after that. And even though I didn't play the whole game because we had I think a senior, he started coming back. But I just I watched film when we had practice and stuff. But bro, I promise you, I'd never cut that film on ever at all unless we was having practice. And I think that contributed to probably not being in some of the best positions at times, because I remember there was one game specifically where they had a pretty big receiver, and you know what they like to do with big receivers on the goal line is fade top every time. And so I was guarding him, and one drive they tried me twice in a row, and I didn't deflect it, but I guarded him. Basically, he couldn't get the ball, kick the field goal. But then they kept, every time they got to the goal line, they just kept trying me because I'm a freshman. And so, but my technique just wasn't there. Like, even though I knew kind of what to expect, either like a fade or a slant. I remember one time he was giving me a release, and he went inside, and I held him PI, and next play he caught a fade on me. But had I been looking at the film, I'm sure like I would have seen him giving away some kind of indicators of what he was about to do. But just even beyond that, just all the opportunities that I had to step into my coach's office, even if it wasn't to watch film, to just say what's up, like how you doing, coach? What are you seeing out of me? What can I do better? Things like that. I never did that. I didn't, and not that I didn't care. I just didn't know. And I'm not gonna act like somebody needs to teach you everything, because you do need to figure some stuff out for yourself as a young man. But I do wish that I would have had like, I don't even know, man. I don't know what would have helped me. And maybe it was, I don't know.
It's like building the relationship.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I never did that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that was something that our coaches were big on, was just building those relationships. And, you know, it wasn't until that I started to build that relationship more with my defensive staff that I realized that all of our best players had a really good relationship with them. Like, all of our best players were going to see coach every day. They're spending time with coach every day, watching some film for about an hour or so before class. Like, you know, that's just what it was. And I, you know, me being the outsider that I was, I didn't even understand that. I'm sitting here thinking like, dang, like, why am I not playing? Why am I not, you know, on each play? Like, I'm watching these dudes, like, it seems like they just know the ball is going to be there. Like, how do you know the ball is going to be there? The whole time they're just watching film. Like, and it's not like they're watching film aimlessly. Like, they're watching it with the coach, like breaking down tendencies, stuff like that. Like, one thing I still, like, I tell my guys this to this day, because like right now I'm coaching over at Stockbridge. I tell them, like, hey, just know if you pressed up on the goal line, or if we're in the red zone and you pressed up, they're gonna throw a fade ball. But if you play off, they're gonna run a slant. So I try to coach and tell my guys, like, hey, just play off, play catch technique, and when they run the slant, you know, break on the slant, and, you know, just don't make any. You just gotta have good eyes. Have good eyes. That's the biggest thing. But, you know, just going through the tendencies, like, that's, I think, probably one of the best things I learned from just going to see coach. But also too, like, the relationship aspect, because you never know when you'll see somebody again. You know what I mean? Like, now I'm 4 years removed from the game. You know, I just started coaching this year, and this past summer, while at some of our 7-on-7 camps, I got reconnected with my same exact DB coaches that I had in Albany. They, you know, moved up the totem pole. They're at Liberty now, and they ended up offering a couple of the boys that I was coaching now. And so now we're, you know, back talking. They're letting me know, like, hey, just keep me updated on X, Y, and Z. And so, you know, it's just, you just never know. You just never know how paths can cross again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody saying that relationships are the currency of success. So, like, if you want to be successful in this world, no matter what field, you need to build relationships. And one thing that I was talking to Trent about in a previous episode was just how in the recruiting process, that's kind of the main thing, is just building these relationships with these coaches. And although my recruiting you know, that's a whole nother story in itself, but a little bit of my issue was my relationship with Coach Davis, our head coach. And I think that kind of affected the relationships that I had with coaches that were recruiting me, because I didn't have that relationship with my head coach. Then that was not relayed to them about, you know, whatever they were looking for. They obviously didn't feel comfortable either with him or with me, or the combination, you know, take that next step. So the point of me saying that was just the relationships. Like you say, if you want to, and kind of like what you were saying about your teammates, the best players were the ones who were going to see the coaches. It's like, bro, kind of like you mentioned earlier, the coaches know what to look for. They know what they're looking at. As a player, you may be smart and you may have the desire to watch it by yourself, but until you get that bird's eye view, it's not all gonna click together for you. So, you know, it's basically like you were like saying, how do they know when the ball is gonna be there? It's like the coach is telling them, bro, the ball is gonna be right here.
Man, I'll never forget this. Like, so this was my red shirt freshman year. At this point, or no, this is my red shirt year. So at this point, I've already started red shirting. And for our home games, this is actually something that helped me learn the plays too. So for our home games, my coach, my DC coach Peoples, I guess him and Coach Revez, they liked my handwriting or something like that. They had asked me if I could chart plays for him, like on the sideline. And I was like, you know what, Coach, I'm just here anyway. I might as well chart plays, help y'all out. And so we were playing Morehouse for our homecoming, and they came out and they were in like a shotgun set. It was 2 receivers to the bunt and a bunch to the field, right? And so our corner to that side, I think he was in a it was like a banjo call or something like that. Like it was him and the safety. The safety is gonna take the first person to go vertical and in. He's gonna take the first person that goes out. And so snap of the ball goes, right? The two receivers run forward. The inside receiver ran like a dig or a post or something like that. But then the outside receiver, it was like at first he was finna run a corner, but then he cut it vertical. But him and the quarterback weren't on the same page. The quarterback thought he was going to run a corner. And so our corner that was in there, he did a speed turn. Like as soon as the tight end did that first move, he hit a speed turn. And like to this day, we were still arguing with coach as to whether or not he got cooked or not. But like, bro, the quarterback threw the ball to the corner. Like I'm talking about, like it looked like him and the receiver, they just weren't on the same page. And somehow our DB knew where the ball was supposed to go, and the quarterback threw the ball straight to our DB, and he ran it back for a touchdown. Like I had never seen a play like that before. Like just I wish I could, if I could find the video, I'll send it to you. But yeah, like that was just straight film study. And I remember going into film that next week, rewatching the game and stuff, and our coach was like, yeah, we saw them run this play on film, but like he, like him and our DB, they were just arguing back and forth about it because they both saw the play on film. They knew to prepare for the play on film. But the way the play played out is like, yo, do we say that our corner is wrong because he didn't guard his guy? But then it's like the quarterback threw it to this spot on the field, and the quarterback ran to the spot where the guy was supposed to be. Like it's just, I don't know. It's just it's a different level of IQ. I feel like like as a DB, if you can be where the receiver is supposed to be, and the receiver don't even know that he's supposed to be there, like that's a whole different, like it's levels to it. It's just levels to it, man. Like yeah.
Yeah, no, that's clamps to me. If he's in the spot that the receiver's supposed to be, that's clamps, bro. I don't care about none of that. And you got the pick, like nah. And see, what I'm thinking now is what the tight end was probably thinking was, oh man, he got me. Let me just turn up field and I'll cook him. But like obviously you got to communicate that with the quarterback. So
Yeah.
bro, nah. If you got your quarterback throwing warm up throws, that's clamps, bro. That's clamps.
Yeah, man. Bro, I couldn't. Like I said, that was probably one of the craziest DB plays I've ever seen. But yeah, that showed the importance though of film study, and just how constantly going in to see coach every day and listening to what coach is telling you is gonna come on game day, like how everything could just show in fruition.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say are the benefits of staying in one system long term? Like today's culture, it's popular to transfer and figure out what the best opportunity for you is. What would you say the benefits were for you for staying in one program the whole time?
So for me, some of the benefits were getting to maintain those relationships, and just having that loyalty, having a place that I could call home, and not leaving on bad terms or anything like that. Because that's one thing that's happening a lot with a lot of these kids is leaving from bigger schools, going to other bigger schools. It's not to say that you don't have your own personal relationships, but it's just different. Once you're at a place and you don't finish there and you just leave out to go finish somewhere else. Another thing, just getting to learn to battle through adversity. Like, I had some teammates that in my later years, once the transfer portal started to become a more popular thing, they ended up just leaving whenever things didn't go their way. And, I mean, everybody has their reasons for leaving. I'm not saying that, it's right or wrong. But I got some teammates who, they wish they didn't leave. They were trying to come back, or, even though they left, like they would still be showing up to our game days while they were in the transfer portal. And, they learned really fast that, the grass isn't greener on the other side, or the grass may not always be greener on the other side. And some people, you'll have this idea about yourself as a player, but you don't really understand what kind of player you are or how people value you until you put yourself out there. And then you realize that it's a lot of coaches that feel like you're average or just like a whole bunch of other, players that they could recruit. Like, there's no real difference in between you and somebody else. And so my thing is, if you have a spot on a college roster, if you have that opportunity where you're already in somewhere, I'd say max it out, make the most of it. Like, because, people are trying to chase the bag or chase this idea of, oh, if I go to a bigger school, I can go to the NFL. When the truth is, if you're talented enough, the NFL is going to find you. Like, there's plenty of guys that I played against at a Division II HBCU that are playing in the league right now making plays. So,
Yeah, I think the same. I think the last point was pretty spot on. Like, we're sometimes we don't see ourselves accurately. Like we think we're better than we are. We think we deserve better. But in reality, that's not kind of like what you were saying earlier. Like you thought that you may have should have had some opportunities to get on the field, but in practice you were still making the same mistakes, and you kind of had to grow through that. So yeah, I think that was probably the best thing that I've heard on this topic is just kind of value the spot you have, because like you said, you may go somewhere else and you're just like the third guy on the bench there. Like you may not be any better. So it's better to just kind of develop in what you have, and then also like you still get to learn, and you get to like you go somewhere else, you got to learn a whole new system. You got whole new teammates, whole new coaches, whole new environment, and so that could be another factor that prohibits you from being in a better spot than you are right now.
I think one thing too that I really valued about my position was that because of the amount of work that I did to get in the position where I was. So after our 2021 season, I had the opportunity to hit the transfer portal and go explore other schools. But as football went, I really just had to like take a step back and look at, just what I had built for myself as far as like my position here and, my relationship with the coaches, my relationship with my teammates. And then also knowing that it's just different because at that point in 2021, dang near every person that was in the room, like I remember their first day of them walking into the room. You know what I mean? So like it's just like it just put me it really felt like I was out there playing with the guys, with my boys. And, if I was gonna play this last season and, I don't know what's on the other side of this last season, I'd rather spend it, with the boys that I had been grinding with versus me trying to go chase after something that really ain't what it is, or like I'm going to another school and now, I'm just not that person anymore. I don't have those kinds of relationships,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's man. I'm sure your coaches and stuff appreciated that, especially knowing like you could have left. And did they ever bring that up to you or nah?
So the way it played out was so about I want to say like October or November of that year, I had told a couple of guys on the team that I was thinking about hitting the portal because I graduated in the spring and I was looking for a new place to start grad school. And so the word ended up getting back to to the coaching staff. And so it'll be times after practice where they would pull me aside and they'd be like, hey, like, we heard you thinking about, leaving out after the season is over. And I was like, yeah, I'm about to graduate. I'm looking for a place for grad school, this, that, and the third. And they're like, dang, Hawk, like, we really want you to stay. Like, we really want you to stay. We really don't want you to go. And I was like, coach, I'm gonna think about it. And so after our season was over, we had our exit meeting, and me and the head coach were sitting there talking. He was going over the season, the success, and everything. He was telling me like as far as improvements goes, like he felt that like he wanted me to not be like a coach, but it was like he kind of wanted me to like continue to like mentor the young guys and try to keep their head on straight and stuff like that. And I was telling him, I was like, yeah, coach, I mean, it's nice to do that, but I'm kind of thinking about leaving. And so my coach, he straight up told me, he was like, man, what do you need? What do we need to get you to stay? And I was like, coach, I don't want to pay for while I'm here. Like I don't want to pay anything. He was like, okay, so you want us to cover your apartment, cover your schooling, cover everything. I was like, coach, I don't want to pay a dime. And they were like, you know what? We got you. And so they upped my scholarship that I had been getting because with the scholarship that I had, I was still coming out of pocket a little bit. But so that last season, they paid for my They paid for my apartment. They paid for my meal plan. Like I was out there like completely free. Like the only thing I had to worry about was, making sure I could get from point A to point B. And so, I mean, it was cool. It was cool staying that last year, getting to stay around the guys and, continue on those relationships and stuff. And yeah, honestly, I couldn't see myself leaving. Like, I feel like I had always been that kind of person, like, because even in high school, like, there was some time that I was thinking about transferring to Sandy Creek, but, it was like, dang, like, I've got these relationships with these guys here. Now, granted, it probably, like, development-wise or stuff like that, probably things could have been different, but, like, I just knew the type of person that I was, and, at the end of the day, this is my football career. Like, I don't want to do something with the idea of, dang, what if this happened, or dang, I shouldn't have left this. Like, I just knew the kind of person I was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and that's cool on your coaches too for doing everything they could to help you stay, and that's also the value of building those relationships because who knows if you wouldn't have done all that you did to get to this point you were, if they would have even extended that offer because they could have been like, all right, well, see ya, like just forgot about it.
Yo,
So that is pretty cool that they valued you enough and obviously saw you were the impact player that you were and also an asset to the team for the younger kids because that's a big thing too is having somebody to guide these freshmen because I mean I came in when I turned 18 like the day I moved in to my dorm in August my freshman year, so it's like you have these young players who need help. Man, I was wilding like my freshman year, like it was just a lot of stuff that could have been easily avoided if I would have had a more voice of reason around me. It may have turned out a little bit differently, but I think because I don't know, man. I was just kind of in my own head. Like I was far away from home. First time really being away from my parents for an extended period of time. Being around teammates who I didn't really know. And also them being a little, I'm not going to say weird because we were all a little weird, but I think just being around a whole bunch of other kids my age that was wild and out of control. And it's all of our first time. It was just kind of tough and
hmm
not really seeking not really seeking mentorship either. Like I never really wanted to be helped also. So yeah, it was all kind of
I think because I went through a similar thing. Like my redshirt freshman year and then my redshirt year. It was as far as like my relationships outside of football were, like the people were, some pretty good people in my opinion. But, we were kids. We were kids, first time away from home, not really handling stuff with the right maturity. And like going into 2019, I put more of an emphasis for myself on being around people who had the same aspirations as I had. And so like I naturally I naturally stopped hanging out with certain people. And it wasn't like I had any issues with them, but like I knew that, like somebody I met along the way was Jordan. So I knew it was like, me and Jordan, we both are trying to stay out the ways, trying to stay from, getting in any mess, really just focus on football or our schoolwork or playing a game. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just, yeah, just trying to be around the right people.
yeah, that's big. And so I want to kind of transition to the post football opportunities. You had some opportunities kind of get to the next level. How exactly did that come about, and how did that end up working out?
So after my last season, after my last season, um, I had gotten an invite to go and play in this one All-Star game down in Alabama. And so while I was still in Albany, I would still be training with the team. I'd go to the field by myself. Like I would still, just be working out, doing my thing. And then I went to the All-Star game and it showed me very fast like how much do I really want to stick in this, because the all-star game was like super unorganized. Like I'm talking about, like we didn't have a place to stay. It was old dilapidated dorms. Like I remember pulling up and I pull up to the college they told us to go to, and it was probably like 45 minutes to an hour outside of Montgomery. And bro, the college campus was like closed. Like it looked like it hadn't been messed with for like a decade. And so I'm trying to get in touch with the coaches that set up the thing, because they hit me up on Twitter. And so they tell me to go to this community center, and we just have to. It's like me and the rest of the dudes that are supposed to be in this game. Mind you, it's some people that drove like 10, 12 hours. It's some people that flew down here from like Maryland or up north. Like we all just sitting in this community center, not really knowing like what's about to go down. It's some people in there, they're hungry because they haven't had any food. Nobody's fed them anything. the only place that's nearby is a Church's Chicken that's like a 10-minute walk because we're in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. Like, it was just it was a whole, I ain't gonna lie, it was a bad experience. But like all of us that were there and I went through that, like, it was something that like, a lot of us will still like if I ever see some of them boys, like we'll still bond about it to this day, just getting through that adversity. And so while there were some scouts and stuff there from different NFL and UFL teams. And, they were talking to some people here and there. And after our first day, after our first day, we ended up doing we had to do like a weigh-in and stuff. And so they made us strip down to like our boxers and we were standing in front of like all these people. They measure everything, like your arm length, finger length, leg length. Like they got everything. It's crazy. Foot size, hands. Like, man, it was a weird experience. But I think I stayed there for 2 days and we did 2 practices there. The first practice that we did, it was on this muddy field. It was a terrible field. We're out there slipping and sliding. I did pretty decent. I ended up getting like a pick or two. Then the next day we practiced on the field that they were supposed to have the All-Star game at, and that field was terrible too. And then people started getting hurt out there. Like I think one dude, unfortunately, I think he like tore his knee up or something like that. So, they didn't really have too many people out there. Like at that point, I was more so thinking about my safety, and it was like, okay, if I do want to keep playing this, then I don't really know if this event or if this, All-Star game was, gonna help better my chances of, showcasing my talents, because just of how bad the field is already, we can't really, showcase too much. And so after that second practice, I told the guy, it was me and a few other guys, we were, we told him we were leaving out, and the coaches that were there, one of the coaches that were there when I told him I was leaving, he tried to sit down and talk to me. He was like, it may be times that, you're trying to bounce from team to team and you may not have a spot to stay, and, you just got to withstand all this stuff. And they were trying to say, like, because we were HBCUs, we should be able to, go withstand some adversity and stuff like that. And so, like, that really just kind of put me in a mindset of like, you know what, if I'm gonna play football at the next level, if it's meant to be, this just isn't the place where it's gonna happen. So I'm gonna just have to go a different route, or figure out things myself, or just be okay with not playing football. And so I ended up telling the coach, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave anyway. And so on my drive back, in my head, I was kind of just thinking about it. I was like, dang, like, that this may have been my last opportunity to play football, and it sucks that it ended like this, but I'd rather be able to walk away from the game versus something happened in game and now I know I can't play anymore. And so it was funny though, because right when I got back to Albany that same night, I ended up getting an invite to the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And so, like, it was funny because the Legacy Bowl, that was kind of like the big All-Star game for us HBCUs. And my teammates, they were all at the spot. They were all, like, a handful of them were at my apartment, like the apartment I was sharing with a couple other teammates. And they were constantly checking in with me about how the All-Star game was and if I had made any plays, or if I could send them any film and stuff like that. So when I originally told them that I was leaving out and I was going to head back to Albany, they were pretty upset, and they were telling me like, oh no, you should stick it out, this, that, and the third. And I was telling them, I was like, I just got a story to tell y'all, because at first I told them that we didn't have a place to stay, but they didn't really understand how bad it was. So, like, right when I parked in the parking lot, that's when the Legacy Bowl had DM'd me everything on Instagram. So it was kind of like a mini celebration, getting to walk into the spot and then tell them boys like, hey, like, y'all not gonna believe it, but I just got this invite. And so that was a pretty cool moment. But that game wasn't until February. And so I ended up leaving out of Albany in December. And when I came home, I found a trainer. Shout out to Jay and Mike. Jay had Elite 1%, and then Mike I forgot what his thing was, but they had this gym down in Fayetteville where they were training a handful of athletes. Some people going pro, some people in high school, and I was just grinding my days out there, getting trying to get better, trying to get ready for the next level. I got down to the Legacy Bowl, and it was a complete switch up from what I had experienced in Alabama. And so we flew in there. We flew into New Orleans. They had charter buses for us to take from the airport to the hotel. The hotel was in downtown New Orleans, right across the street from the Superdome. It was just a super nice experience. They fed us well. They had Mardi Gras going on at the same time. So it was funny because it was really like a business trip, but they put us in the middle of, essentially what's like a party city. And so I think it was really just about seeing how focused we would be and how serious we would take it. And so, I was just making sure I was on my P's and Q's, getting my breakfast when I needed to, getting my stretches in, getting a little workout here and there, making sure I practiced good. I had some pretty good practices, competed well in our one-on-ones, got to the game, I had a pretty decent game. Just at that point, most of my, I guess, pressure that I was getting from professional teams came from like indoor teams or overseas teams. And ideally I wanted to play in the NFL or CFL. So I just kept pushing for that. I had my pro day, and after our pro day, I went and did a couple of CFL tryouts that were in Atlanta, and it was just a journey. But what really put things in perspective for me, as far as just if I wanted to continue on with doing this or not, was it was one day over the summer after I think this was after the pro day or after the CFL tryout, one of the two. But I was at Fayette, running on the field with the tire on my back, like just working on building up and increasing my top end speed and holding that top end speed. And I ended up pulling my hamstring out there. And that was the first time I had ever had to deal with an injury, and it wasn't like there was no like immediate medical personnel or immediate trainer or anything like that. Like, it was really just me and the person I had been training with. But he's not no medical person. He went and got me some ice, but it really just put things in perspective for me. And then also too, I saw how some of these teams, they'll want you to go try out for them, or want you to go do, just see what you're talking about. And if you get hurt playing with these teams, and they just gonna send you back home, and now you got to figure it out while you still got you know a bum ankle or messed up hamstring, messed up knee, like. And you essentially, if you go in the route of being a professional football player, your body is your currency. And so it just, like I said, it just put things in perspective for me. And I just understood. It's like I understood and I respected the grind about it, but just with where my body was, I knew I was coming to the end, and so I just chose to preserve my body rather than, continuing on to play football.
Wow, yeah, that's a great story. Did that allow you to maintain like all the positive things that you have learned over your career, or did that kind of put a damper on things just because it ended in that way? Even though it wasn't unsuccessful, it just didn't necessarily turn out how you thought it would. Like, what did you think overall?
So, I mean, I was like, for me, I just felt like I was just grateful for the opportunity. Like, it didn't really take away anything for me, because I felt like I was just surprised that I was still playing football as long as I was, because in 2018, I remember after that football season, I just did my personal life was going bad. Like, I did real bad in the classroom. Like, I honestly thought my career was going to be over back then. And, God blessed me with allowing me to somehow, some way come back to school another year and being able to play one more year. And so after that, it was kind of just like, dang, like, what? I'll just be happy with anything I do after this point. And then, even again with the All-Star game, like that first All-Star game I went to, when I was driving home, like, I was kind of just thinking about it, like, dang, that's probably it. And so the fact of the matter that I got the Legacy Bowl invite is like, you know what, let's just see what happens. Like, it was really kind of like just surprising for me to see just like some of the things like happen the way that they did. And so I guess now, like, it's like I don't really have like regrets about like football or like, like of course there's things that I excuse me, of course there's things that I wish I could have done differently. But as far as just like feeling like ill mannered about the game or anything like that, like I don't really feel that way. Like I said, a lot of the things that happened to me, like I wasn't even really expecting it to happen. So I was pretty happy with where I was and just getting able to, and then also too, like, because I went through the injuries that I went through in college, like, so also too in 2018, I was playing with a torn labrum. And so that off season going into 2019, I was out that whole off season. I had just had surgery. I was walking around with a big old cast on my arm. Like I honestly thought that would be the last time I was going to get surgery. And then going into 2021, 3 games into the season, I break my hand. And, when that happened, it was like, dang, like, okay, this is just the nature of the game. Like, if I'm going to play this, especially at this level or a higher level, this is just a part of the risk. And then at the end of that season, I got a pinched nerve. And so it really just for me, it put like a bigger emphasis on like, I'd rather be healthy than continue to play this game or continue to put myself at risk. And so, like once I did get hurt and I wasn't within the realm of like having like an immediate trainer or something like that, it was like, okay, I gotta assess these risks. And it just felt like for me, the risk outweighed the benefit. And it's not to say the benefit isn't a lot because you make it to the NFL, that's childhood dream, but it's so slim and so like the chances to making that is so slim. And then you got to think too, like say if you don't make it that year that you come out of college, you can grind and try to hope for that opportunity that next year, but you're no longer just going against the guys who's on the same type of timing that you're on, but you're also going against a whole new fresh set of guys coming out of college. Like it's just it just put things in perspective for me. Just being able to see the whole picture of everything. It just made me more appreciative of everything I had done up until that point.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of for me puts it kind of reminds me of just how many things have to work out just for you to even get a sliver of the next level. Not even talking about the NFL, CFL, arena football, or
Mm-hmm.
overseas, whatever. Like it's so much that goes into not only getting those opportunities, but also being able to step into that next level. So that's good that you went out on a high note and I like your perspective though because you got to like such a low point. Everything else was basically just an add on. So it wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of were you didn't feel entitled to anything. That is great that you got to experience the real I guess HBCU the Legacy Bowl after after that first one because I'm sure that was pretty
Yeah,
frustrating and everything.
yeah, and like I said, it was just funny because, like I said, a lot of us guys that were at that game, we bonded after leaving there because we understood what we went through. And like one of the things that we had said after that last practice was, "Hey y'all boys, I'm gonna catch y'all in New Orleans." A lot of us were saying that jokingly. We hadn't gotten an invite. We were still waiting. You know what I'm saying? And sure enough, a handful of the boys that were there ended up. We ended up getting that invite to New Orleans, and so after the game, we were taking pictures and stuff like that. Like, it was just it was a it was a bad experience, but I met some great people through that experience.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You kind of full circle moment.
Hmm.
So, any closing thoughts? We talked about a great deal. I think you shared some great insights. Give us some tips on current athletes and maybe even former athletes what they can learn from your story.
Just to push through adversity. You never know what's on the other side. That's one. Another one is be flexible. Again, you just never know what's on the other side. You try that one thing that you may have an itch for. You may just, it's like, hey, I'm trying to make things work in this one position, but it's not really working. Let me see what happens when I, try another position. You may find more success than what you found in your first position, but just take advantage of every opportunity that you get. Like, I think in high school or, at the lower levels, you can be entitled to certain things, especially like when the playing field is so vast. You got some people who is their first year playing, and you may be somebody who's been playing since you were younger or, even with coaching, but, just take advantage of every opportunity. And yeah, that's the biggest things to me.
The biggest takeaway from today's conversation is this: becoming the player you want to be requires staying long enough to become the player your program can trust. Everybody wants the role and the recognition, but those things are not given right away. Whether we're talking about staying out of school for the long haul, overcoming the adversity of fighting for playing time, or transferring after the first season, the bigger conversation always comes back to the athlete experience. Athletes still need guidance, perspective, and people who understand what it feels like from the inside. So before we leave the locker room, make sure you're subscribed and locked in for the next episode. If this conversation gave you something to think about, comment with your thoughts and share it with another athlete. And remember, the game changed, but your story is still being written. Take care and God bless.